No way they're bringing this back, man. That is so broken. It's so broken. No, don't bring it back. Don't bring this back. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. We got another War Within class update, some really big ones once again. It seems like they're always just dropping big ones on us at this point. I really like these updates because it's really good time to see what's going on in the devs' heads. What type of direction are they looking to take the game? Because, you know, these changes are subject to changes. We are in the alpha phase, but it's really good for figuring out how they're thinking about the game, which is the big overarching thing to consider moving into the future. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with those changes related to World of Warcraft, then smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So the first thing is that the human racial is now no longer going to be providing you any sort of reputation increase. I think this is likely because they're introducing the war band, which is shared reputation, and they don't want you feeling like you need to be playing human in order to unlock reputation across your account or something or other. But it could potentially slow down your reputation farm unless they're compensating that with like an overall reputation increase across all races. Instead, you're going to get Hearthstone cooldown reduced by 5 minutes, and you're going to get 2 charges of Hearthstone. So I think a lot less, functionally powerful as far as, people who want to farm transmogs and rep and things like that. PvP, obviously, and even competitive Mythic Plus, aside from maybe if you need to unlock something that's rep based, it's not going to be too big of a deal. For Death Knights, for the Deathbringer, we are seeing Wave of Souls damage increased by 50%. Exterminate Second Scythe damage also being increased by 50%. For Rider of the Apocalypse, we are seeing massive damage increases across the board. Mograin's Heartstrike is going to be doing 250% more damage. Trollbane's Obliterate's going to be doing 33% more. And its cast frequency of Obliterate's going up 100%. Nazgrim's Scourge Strike damage is going up 100%. And the cast frequency is also going up 100%. And Whitemane's Death Coil damage is going up 100%. So, I mean, I don't know how you guys keep getting away with this, man. I don't know how the Death Knights keep getting away with this, but you just keep getting more stuff, okay? For Sandlane, the specialization is competing with Rider Apocalypse. Incite Terror has been updated. Vampiric Strike, Heart Strike, and Scourge Strike cause your targets to take 1% increased shadow damage, up to 5% for 15 seconds. And Vampiric Strike benefits 300% more from this effect. Interesting. So it might be really bursty with this change coming through. For Blood Death Knight, we're seeing a huge amount of changes. Now, the last time I remember Blood Death Knight being really viable in Mythic Plus was when they were spamming Bone Storm in Legion and just like doing mass pulls. So curious to see what they've done this time around for them. They've moved a bunch of your talents around and added new pathing. There's a new talent called the Bone Collector. When you would pull an enemy, generate 1 charge of Bone Shield. So really focusing on Bone Shield uptime. Newtown Ossified Vitriol. When you lose a Bone Shield charge, the damage of your next Marrow Rend is increased by 15%, stacking up to 75%. That could have ramifications in PvP as well for increasing your just overall burst damage. So better uptime of Bone Shield and more damage trading for those Bone Shields. Those both sound like really good things to potentially increase your viability. Tightening Grasp now silences enemies for 3 seconds when they are pulled and no longer increases the damage enemies take from you when they are pulled by Gorfreen's Grasp. So giving you an AoE silence, similar to that of like the Demon Hunter tanks. AoE silence could definitely increase viability for overall AoE disruption. Really depends on what level of Keystone you're doing. Again, I think Vengeance Demon Hunter is generally taken because of its mobility to just avoid taking damage in a lot of cases when you get to like extremely high keys, whereas Blood doesn't really have that, but so I think that's probably going to be a main problem for it at least. Blood Drinker now reduces the damage the enemy deals to you by 20% while channeling, and for an additional 5 seconds after channeling it fully, now also generates 20 additional runic power of restoration. So really big buffs to a lot of your cooldowns. It's a big juicer for a Blood Drinker. Consumption now also causes your Blood Plague to occur 50% more quickly for 8 seconds and generate 2 runes. Bone Storm. So this is one that I think is going to be really important. What have they done to this? It no longer costs runic power, but it can now cost up to 10 Bone Shield charges and last 1 second for each charge consumed. Generate 1 Bone Shield charge every 1 second while active. Okay, so this is gonna, if you're at 10 Bone Shield stacks, you're gonna get a lot of damage out with this, and effectively it's gonna be for free, I think, based on a couple of these other changes that are a little bit down below. Reinforced Bones now lets Bone Shield stack 2 times, so you can go to 12 and then use 10 and then still have 2 charges. Then while they're being consumed up here, you're also getting increased damage on your Marrow Rend. So it's a lot of synergy there for AoE damage. Heartbreaker's runic power per target hit increased to 2, up from 1, and now a 1-point talent instead of 2. We really like those types of changes, trimming down the 2-point talent trees into 1 point. They seem to be doing that on a lot of trees, which is why keeping up with these changes is really good, because you see that type of direction. They've been really hammering on that reduction of overall 2-point talent tree talents. Perseverance of the Ebon Blade's versatility bonus increased to 6%, up from 4, and it's now 1 point. Shattering Bone, now a 1 point, down from 2. Red Thirst reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 2. It was 1, and now is a 1-point talent tree. And Crimson Scourge is now learned at 21 baseline, and Death's Caress is now learned at 23 baseline. It seems for Blood Death Knight. So it seems like a really big win as far as tank viability. And it's one of those things where, like, tanks and healers, you want those roles to be as competitively viable with each other as possible, because there's not a lot of people who tank and heal. So if there's only one tank spec that's desirable, you've just alienated all of the other players that could have possibly been filling groups. You really need tank and healer balance to be on point for almost all the content in the game, so that building groups isn't as frustrating and disruptive. So I really hope that they can hit that balance better than they have in the past, where it's like just one tank, you know, and usually one healer. Usually it's like maybe there's 2 or 3 that cycle through, but it's usually only one tank in a lot of patches. For Frost, new talent, Hyper, I can't even try to pronounce that, Pyrexia. Your runic power spending abilities have a chance to additionally deal 30% of the damage dealt over 4 seconds, so adding more sustain-oriented damage. We've seen that in the last update for Death Knight, which I'll have linked at the end of this video. I think that's a good direction for Frost. Unholy, new talent, Festering Scythe. Every 20 Festering wounds you burst empowers Festering Strike to become Festering Scythe, and the Festering Scythe will sweep through all enemies within 14 yards in front of you, dealing shadow damage and infecting them with 2 to 3 Festering wounds. They're probably taking the animation from the Scythe from Frost and then making it plaguey, is what I'm going to guess here. But this is going to be a nice kind of sweep of cleave damage in front of yourself. New talent, Decomposition. Virulent Plague has a chance to abruptly flare up, dealing 50 to 100% of the damage it dealt to the target over the last 4 seconds. When this effect triggers, the duration of your active minions are increased by 1 second up to 3. This is a 2-point talent. That could be really good for extending. You know, your Army of Dead is now a really reduced cooldown. You can get Abomination now baseline on the talent tree for Unholy. I don't know how you guys keep doing this, man. The War Within, they might have forgotten about you for a while, guys, on Death Knight, but in the War Within, you are eaten right now. You guys are eaten. Infected Claws moved to the node after Ghoulish Frenzy. For Demon Hunter, the Aldaraki Re-Riz is like the purple bouncing Throglaive. What are they doing with this one? Wounded Quarry now always procs bonus damage while Reaver's Mark is on your target. Soul Fragment generation is still a chance. Reaver's Mark duration increased to 20 seconds. Art of the Glaive activation thresholds doubled. Intent Pursuit cooldown reduction increased to 4 seconds. Evasive Action no longer extends Tactical Retreat Fury generation periodically. And Evasive Action no longer resets initiative. Reaver's Glaive damage has been buffed by 200%. So they're buffing a lot of the hero talent damage, it seems like, but that we just saw from the Riders of Apocalypse. I want to make this feel more impactful. Bit concerned that if it gets so strong, it's going to be like Shadowlands, where it was like all about your Covenant ability, and then the rest of your kit just kind of like fell to the wayside. So a little bit concerned that we might be going down that direction at the moment with changes like this. For Druid of the Claw, Ravage and Dreadful Wound now deal 10% more damage. Dreadful Wound now reduces damage dealt to you by 4% for Feral and 10% for Guardian. Feral's aggravate wounds now triggers from an ability that costs energy. Empowered Shapeshifting increases the damage of Mangle by 10, up from 5, and the damage of Swipe and Shred from 3, down from 5. So focusing on buffing single target as opposed to AoE. That was a tuning issue there. Strike for the Heart now increases the ability critical strike chance and critical strike damage by 6, down from 8. Strike for the Heart now causes Mangle to heal the Guardian Druid for 1% of their maximum health. Feral Wild Power Surge now increases the damage of your next Swipe by 50, down from 100, or your next Mangle by 200, up from 100. So really big focus on single target as opposed to AoE with this change. Guardians, while it's not going to be great for Mythic Plus, could be really powerful for PvP and arena situations. Guardian's Wild Power Surge now increases the damage of your next Ferocious Bite or Rip by 100, up from 50. And Wild Shape Mastery's retention of Bear Form stats in Cat Form also retains Bear Form's resistances to being critically struck or parried, to make you a little bit more durable for Druid of the Claw here. For Feral specifically, Primal Wrath range increased to 10 yards, up from 8. Added a connector between Primal Wrath and Pouncing Strikes in the talent tree. Rampant Ferocity's damage increased by 50% when the player spends extra energy on Ferocious Bite. Thrashing Claws now requires players to know Thrash in order to apply the bleed from Thrash. And for Restoration, developers notes, we are making some changes to raid healing cooldowns. So they want to make healing cooldowns more powerful outside of raid. And this is something that, balancing across healing a group of 20 people versus healing 5 versus healing maybe only 2 versus healing in a delve with from 1 to 5. There's varying group sizes, and one tuning fits all does not work. So a lot of like raid healing cooldowns are extremely weak in any 5-player and lower content. Even 10-player, like Battlegrounds even, you need to go up to 20 before you start seeing their value. So Tranquility for Resto Druid is going to get a 400% healing increase. And from playing Cataclysm specifically, Tranquility felt really good to press, although you don't have it as anyone other than Resto in the War Within, so not going to mean too much for somebody who plays like Boomkin or Feral in that regard, but for Resto Druids, that's a big juicer on your Tranquility. Tranquility's initial heal now decreases its healing beyond 5 targets, and Tranquility's heal over time effect is no longer increased while out of a raid environment. So they removed those previous buffs to give you a super buff, and then a scaling depending on how many targets that it's healing, which I think this is the right decision to go through as far as cooldowns, especially if these are cooldowns for classes that are being overly nerfed and affecting their viability in any other content of the game aside from the raid. For Evoker, Chrono Warden, time convergence no longer grants stamina when using a defensive cooldown longer than 45 seconds. It now also specifies that it only functions when casting non-defensive abilities. So it wants you to focus on doing offense here with the Chrono Warden. Augmentation, new passive sense power. While enabled, allies with their major cooldown active will be highlighted in the game field and will display a buff icon on party and raid frames. Learned automatically and can be toggled on and off. I almost wonder, like, why is this only available for AUG? Because you're trying to like fly near them and buff them up or target them specifically. Because that's just useful information for anybody in the game to be able to know that type of stuff. Prescience has been updated. When cast without a friendly target, the smart targeting will now prefer a damage dealer role who have their major cooldowns active. Honestly, I'd like to see this change with Innervate as well, like an auto cast Innervate feature, because as much as it's like a minor thing, like if you're playing arenas or something, making a macro to make sure you can innervate a healer as opposed to just it innervates a healer that's nearby would cut down on like having to do all that extra setup modes there, like especially in solo shuffle, solo queue battlegrounds where you're going to get a different healer every time and you just want to innervate, you know your healer's nearby, you don't want to waste time switching targets and having to deal with all the binds involved with that. I think adding some like smart casting to some of those spells so that people don't have to make macros to be able to do that, because it's effectively the same thing. It just shortcuts needing to make the macro. Could be a nice just little quality of life change for people who don't want to deal with a lot of keybinds. Devastation, Feed the Flames once again triggers a Firestorm after casting 10 Pyres. This is in addition to its new effect of increasing Pyre and Disintegrate damage while they are inside the Firestorm. So there's a lot of buffs in the previous build for Firestorm specifically. Now, having to keep enemies in a specific area is really a big downside, the same as it was for keeping mages inside of their circle of power, or whatever it was called, that they had in the past, and they completely changed that because they didn't want people to be stationary. This is like the reverse, but same idea. So I don't know if it'll end up working. It really just depends on how much throughput they give it. Snapfire can now trigger from both Living Flame and Pyre. For preservation, Dreamflight's healing is going to be increased by 100% out of raid. So again, all the healers are getting this big group targeted healing buffs. Mana cost of Emerald Blossom reduced by 15%. Flow State can now trigger from Empower spells cast from Stasis. And Threads of Fate can no longer trigger from Empower spells cast from Stasis. There's an inconsistency here, but it's necessary to balance Threads of Fate between augmentation and preservation. Threads of Fate tooltip also indicates casting an Empower spell, while Flow State does not use the keyword casting. Okay, so just trying to even out between the specs. This is like a problem with having hero talents shared between specializations. And I was a bit concerned about it, especially roles where it's like tank and DPS or healer and DPS. Those are likely going to be the ones that have the biggest problems as far as tuning or trying to get them to work with the same ideas and same tooltips next to each other. I'm personally not a big fan of shared specializations. I'm a shared talents, or shared covenants, because they usually just end up being lackluster for one spec and then really good possibly for the other. But it's what we're going with, so I'm hoping they can find a way to make it work. For survival, Lunge no longer increases attack range by 3 yards. Poor survival hunters, dude. Poor survival hunters. You guys have been waiting for an update. Lunge, no extra yard range. But this is following consistently with the changes that they made to all melee DPS to bring down their melee abilities back into actually melee range. For Mage, Time Anomaly has been updated. Now grants Brain Freeze instead of Fingers of Frost for Frost Mages. New talent, Inspired Intellect. Arcane Intellect grants you additional 3% intellect. This is a choice node with Time Anomaly. Ooh. Okay. I mean, Brain Freeze again. Well, I think it's the instant flurry, right? Instead of the instant Ice Lance crit, or you can just get baseline extra intellect. I mean, but it's only you. It's not like your group. I'm thinking that, I mean, in PvE, intellect is probably more valuable. In PvP, it might be better to get the burst. For Mage, Gravity Lapse now hits 5 targets. It was 3. Wait, what? Gravity Lapse hits more than 1 target? Isn't Gravity Lapse the stun? I'm going to have to log on and look at that. Are you kidding? They're going to get a 5 target stun? Okay, all right then. Spell Slinger fixed an issue that prevented Frost and Arcane Splinters from interacting with damage bonuses and proc effects such as Touch of the Magi. This is another big one, is like catching all of the bugs, because I feel like there have been a lot of bugs in like multiple versions of World of Warcraft that are coming out at the moment. And I'm really hoping that everything can work as intended, especially with how fast they're trying to push more and more content out. So this is like a big deal, making sure that abilities are working with other abilities and synergizing correctly. For Arcane, Spellfrost Teachings has been redesigned. Direct damage from Splinters has a 3% chance to reset the cooldown of Arcane Orb or Frozen Orb. I think it's a lot cooler. You know, just getting like extra icicles on your damage from Splinters wasn't that great. Adding some cooldown reductions, you know, this is a little bit more synergistic, and increases all damage dealt by your Arcane Orb and Frozen Orb. But that's a really good change. Like, those spells did not do a lot of damage. So buffing up their damage and giving you a chance to get another reset of them, I think is really cool. That makes this talent tree a lot more appealing. The location of Force of Will and Spellfrost Teachings has swapped. Arcane Splinter damage reduced by 50%. Embedded Arcane Splinter damage reduced by 50%. Okay, so they buffed all the other hero talents up above. You getting a nerf is Arcane, though. Controlled Instincts Cleave effect no longer damages the primary target. Controlled Instinct Arcane Splinter Cleave percentage reduced to 20 from 30. Embedded Splinter duration increased to 18 seconds. Splinters were benefiting from pandemic dot extensions unintentionally, which was extending their uptime to 20 seconds from the stated 16 seconds. This was creating adverse effects and durations when consuming embedded splinters or applying and maintaining embedded splinter dots. To compensate for the uptime loss from this bug fix, or increasing the base duration of splinters to 18 seconds. Okay, so this is what I'm saying, like, when there's a bug in the game, what they have to go through, the lengths and hoops they have to go through in order to try and get things back to where they need to be. For Arcane specifically, Lay Drinker proc chance reduced to 10 from 15. Arcane Surge is now guaranteed to generate clear casting. Arcane Surge is a reliable source of clear casting that Arcane Mages lost with the removal of mana-based clear casting procs. We're making Arcane Surge proc clear casting baseline to ensure you're rolling into your burns with some more clear casting availability. Arcane Blast now has a 5% chance to generate clear casting. Arcane is shifting a lot more to like spamming Arcane Blast, because now you can't use missiles unless you have a proc, but I think the gameplay of using missiles with a proc is better overall. But there's going to have to be a little bit of readjustments to the spells, which is what they're doing here. Spark of the Magi has been redesigned. Now makes your next Arcane Blast, Arcane Barrage, or Arcane Missiles echo for 25% of the extra damage. Was increased damage dealt of these spells. This updated behavior will allow you to properly benefit from Spark of the Magi damage bonus on an Arcane Barrage you fired before Touch of the Magi is applied. Mastery Savant now properly increases the damage dealt by Arcane Surge. Aether Attunement has been redesigned. Every 3 times you consume clear casting, you gain Aether Attunement. Aether Attunement primary target damage increase reduced to 100 from 150. Aether Attunement secondary target damage increase reduced to 50 from 100. We're still committed to maintaining minimal buff tracking for Arcane. We're also being sensitive to the desire for Arcane Mages to be able to reliably acquire and hold effects for use in their burst windows and AoE moments, both of which Aether Attunement excels at. We feel this new design strikes a nice balance that makes the effect easier to attract, reliable, and at a higher frequency to help add more moments of excitement for Arcane and AoE. So I've been trying to make Arcane simpler, less complicated, less tracking overall, and this is following that direction. Resonance and Arcane Cleave has swapped location. For Fire Mage, they've removed Charring Embers, which is Phoenix Flame applying Charring Embers to all enemies. Charring Embers is moved to gate 2. It's just all gone. Charring Embers is just gone. They've completely removed it. We've listened to the feedback, Charring Embers, and tracking gameplay behind it, and have opted to remove it. We're interested in preserving the gameplay of the new Phoenix Reborn from the Ashes, but we feel that they can comfortably exist without Charring Embers. Call of the Sun King can no longer grants 15% increased Phoenix Flames damage, and instead makes Phoenix Flames always critical strike. Extraza's Fury no longer makes Phoenix Flames always critically strike. Okay, so you're getting a change off here. Also, I don't think you're going to run the Sun King in PvP. From the Ashes now grants 15% increased Phoenix Flames damage. From the Ashes is now in gate 3. Surging Blaze is returned to gate 1. Firestarter position change, so just talent rearrangements. Phoenix Reborn now requires 25 hits, up from 20. Wildfire has returned and is now in gate 2. Ash and Feather is now in gate 2 on a choice node. So just a bunch of rearrangements. New talent, Burning Blood. Damage dealt to targets below 30% is increased by 10%. This talent has not yet been implemented yet, giving you more execute power. New talent, Heat Shimmer. Damage from Ignite has a 5% chance to make your next Scorch deal 25% increased damage and deal damage as though your target was below 30%. Scorch has been really tough to make viable, at least in PvP. Curious to see if this has enough to actually do that. New talent, Sparking Cinders. Living Bomb explosions have a 15% increased chance to increase the damage of your next Flame Strike or Pyroblast. Oh my god. Okay, you're going to be getting a lot of those in this expansion, so that's going to be really crazy. Controlled Destruction increases damage taken from Ignite by 0.5%, stacking up to 50 times. Was 1%, stacking up to 25. It's going to take longer to ramp. That's going to be worse in PvP. Also makes Dispelling Ignite even more important in PvP scenarios. Mistweavers are getting the same type of healer treatment, with overall raid healing going up. Revival healing is being increased by 400%. Revival is one of those cooldowns, though, in PvP where it was like already strong, so I'm a bit worried about it. Although it seems like in Battlegrounds, because they have more than 5 targets, if all of them are in range of the spell, that this buff may not actually matter. And I think they also changed it so it doesn't dispel everything. It's got like a limited cap on how many debuffs it can dispel. So hopefully it's going to keep Mistweaver more in line, because healing in Battlegrounds is really strong at the moment. I think the biggest thing that could cause solo queue Battlegrounds to not be successful is healers being way too strong. Having played Cataclysm recently and played Battlegrounds, the pacing of it feels so good. Healers run out of mana. Fights aren't lasting indefinitely. You're not having a singular team fight at one node be the entire Battleground. It feels way better. So I'm really hoping these healer changes don't mean that healers are just completely out of control. Nothing dies, because that's when Battlegrounds are just, I think they're at their absolute worst. New talent, Lotus Infusion. Allies with Renewing Mist receive 15% more healing from you, and Renewing Mist duration is increased by 2 seconds. Choice Node with Chi Harmony, just overall increased throughputs. Invigorating Mist no longer counts full health allies among its splash cap, but its healing has been decreased. Windwalker. I feel like we haven't seen a lot of Windwalker lately. Abilities affected by ordered elements, Dance of Chi-Ji or Blackout Kick, now contribute to Drinking Horn Cover, Spiritual Focus, and Heart of the Jade Serpent as their full Chi value was spent. Okay, that could be some crazy burst. New talent, Ferociousness. Critical strike chance increased by 2%. This effect is increased by 100% while Zwen the White Tiger is active. 20% more crit. So this is like a trade-off from the old one where you like Tiger Palm, then got a big, I think it was a haste. Now you're going to get a crit modifier when you've got Zwen out. Mark of the Crane is now just baseline. Crane Vortex now occupies Mark of the Crane's previous location. Dual Threat has moved to Crane Vortex's previous location, and its damage has been increased. So buffs for Windwalker Monk. Holy Paladins, Avenging Crusader, that's a name I haven't seen in a long time, no longer costs Holy Power, so you just immediately bang that bad boy out. Grants an additional charge of Crusader Strike for its duration, and its duration is increased by 3 seconds, so they're orienting a lot more to healers doing damage in this expansion. They're giving Cat Weaving to Feral Druids. Now we see Avenging Crusader for Holy Paladin. They already had Fist Weaver for Monk, and I'm not sure if this is their attempt to try and make more people want to heal, because if they do damage, it's more fun, but I feel like they're losing the identity of what the healer role is in the process of this, because there's a lot of people who just want to heal, and they don't really even want to contribute a ton of damage. So when the main reason you bring a healer is how much damage they do, you've now made it unappealing for people who are like core, just want to heal at their base, and you're changing the complete identity of it. And I think scaling up cooldowns has negatively impacted the healer role, because DPS are more in control of their own survivability than the healers are. So you don't feel like you have that responsibility of that role in the Trinity. It's more of a shared role amongst everybody, and you're kind of just an inferior DPS that's sort of off healing people at the same time. So I have a bit of concern with making every healer like that. I think it's cool to have, 1 or 2 specs that are that can have focused builds around that type of playstyle. But if every healer is doing that, and it's the only build that they can do in content, I think you're going to start having problems. Crusader's Might now additionally reduces the cooldown of Judgment. Holy Light's cast time reduced to 2 from 2.5. You might actually put this on your bar. Infusion of Light now increases the healing of Holy Light. This was previously granting Holy Power. Inflorescence of the Sunwell now increases the additional healing from Infusion of Light for Holy Light. The previous was grant Holy Power. So just seems like buffs for Holy Paladin overall here. For Retribution Paladin, Radiance Glory's Wake of Ashes now grants 8 to 10 seconds of Avenging Wrath of Crusade, was 10 to 12. I think bringing down the infinite duration of Avenging Wrath right when I made a video about it, man. Radiant Glories, each Holy Power spent has a chance to grant you 4 to 5 seconds of Avenging Wrath, down from 5 to 6. And Divine Wrath now extends the duration of Radiant Glory separately. Null Tooltip increases the duration of Avenging Wrath of Crusade by 3 and Radiant Glory by 1.5. So I think they are trying to rein in the uptime a bit here. Infinite Avenging Wrath was going to be pretty well, but it still seems like you could get a pretty long amount. I mean, they just shaved like a second off of each of these. For Void Weaver, Void Wraith damage is reduced by 50%, Void Flay damage reduced by 25%, and No Escape reduces enemy movement speed by 70 down from 80. So nerfs to Void Weaver for Shadow. Discipline, Void Heart increases atonement healing by 10 down from 20. Collapsing Void damage reduced by 50. And Void Blast damage reduced by 50. Oh my god, they're nerfing Void Weaver really hard. Void Weaver was super cool. We've got Oracle coming in. So new talent, Divine Providence. Premonition gains an additional charge. New talent, Desperate Measures. Desperate Prayer lasts an additional 10 seconds. Angelic Bulwark's absorption effect is increased by 15% of your maximum health. New talent, Save the Day for 6 seconds after casting Leap of Faith. You may cast it a second time for free, ignoring its cooldown. If for some reason you wanted to have a group hug, you can now have a group hug session as a disciplined priest, or a priest in general. That's the running oracle. New talent, Clairvoyance. After casting Premonition of Solace, your next Premonition grants all of the Premonition effects at 100% effectiveness. Premonition now only changes to the next spell in the sequence when Premonition is cast. Prompt Deliverance has been removed and replaced with Save the Day. Divine Feathers now also increase the movement speed bonus of Angelic Feather by 10%. Perfect Vision is now a choice node against Fate Bender and reduces the cooldown of Premonition by 15 seconds, was previously 6. Fate Bender now increases the effects of Premonition by 30 and no longer has conditional requirements. Narrowed Visions has been removed and replaced with Divine Providence. Divine Providence is in Perfect Vision's previous location. Preventative Measures no longer increases the value of Power Word Shield for Holy or Prayer of Mending for Discipline. Bonuses increased to 15 up from 10. And Assured Safety no longer causes Power Word Shield to trigger Prayer of Mending for Discipline and no longer causes Prayer of Mending to trigger a Power Word Shield for Discipline. Assured Safety now instead applies 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending, it was previously 1, and applies a Power Word Shield at 25% effectiveness. Grand Reveal has been removed and replaced with Clairvoyance. So they're focusing really heavily on Oracle. I feel like a lot of people found Oracle to be kind of confusing and cumbersome, switching between all of the different buffs. They felt like the masks for the Night Fae for Priest, and everybody's really excited about Void Weaver. So they're nerfing Void Weaver and trying to make Oracle more appealing, but it's like one of those things where like they're trying to force feed you the vegetables that you don't really want to eat when you'd rather have the candy. So I'm a bit concerned with this, although there's a lot of like interesting little utility things, but generally speaking, little utility things don't end up being the most desired or valuable in almost any given content. It's just throughput that ends up being the champion thing to go after. For Discipline, new talent, Prophet's Will. Your Flash Heal and Powered Shields are 30% more effective on yourself. Holy, new talent, Prophet's Will. Your Flash Heal, and Holy Serenity are 30% more effective on yourself. And I think as Holy, you generally take more damage than you do as Discipline, at least, with how Atonement works. But you can run some leech builds with Holy and have some self-sustain through dealing damage, but some self-survivability for Disc and Holy. For Discipline, we would like Rapture to be a more satisfying cooldown that flows well with the rotation. With that goal in mind, we're removing the time pressure aspect of the cooldown and increasing the impact of each Power Shield so it can be used to triage damage in a more careful and interesting way. Rapture increases the absorption of your next 3 Power Word Shields by 80%. It was 40 for 8 seconds. So you're only going to get 3 big Power Word Shields. We're making some changes to raid healing cooldowns at the War Within. So Luminous Barriers is getting a massive increase to 400%. And Luminous Barrier now decreases its absorb amount beyond 5 targets. This changed to 3 charges because it's purgeable. This makes it way weaker. Because you get it, they purge it, get it, purge it, get it, purge it. That makes it way weaker in PvP situations for Discipline Priest specifically. For Holy, they're increasing Divine Hymn and in less than 5 targets. This spell was actually already pretty strong in those areas, at least in PvP from playing it in Dragonflight. That's going to be a huge amount of healing. We already went over the possible problematic things with that with regards to Battlegrounds. Totemic Hero talent change is now fully implemented for Shaman. We'll have to check that out. And there's a new model for the Surging Totem. For Resto Shamans, Healing Tide is getting a buff by 400%, but beyond 5 targets going to be reduced. This is probably the biggest impact one, I think, right now, at least for PvP coming through for all the healers we've seen so far. For Warlock, Wither is just getting a damage over time effect nerf by 30%. But the application damage is also getting an 80% nerf, so just retuning these. Affliction, new talent. I see the word Haunt, I get excited. Increases the damage of Haunt by 35% and reduces its cast time by 25%. Haunt will now also apply Shadow's Embrace. I like that, synergizing with other spells in the kit, so it doesn't feel like it's just on its own island by itself, really disruptive to your overall rotation. New talent, Malign Omen. Casting Soul Rot grants 3 applications of I'm not even going to try and pronounce this anymore. Your next Malefic Rapture deals 20% increased damage and extends the duration of your damage over time effects and your Haunt by 2 seconds. Problem with that is Haunt being a keybind and Soul Rot being a keybind, but I like that they're synergizing those so it's possible to consider them at the same time in one build. New talent, Malefic Touch. Malefic Rapture deals an additional Shadow Flame damage to each targeted effects. And new talent, Infirmity. The stack count of agony is increased by 4 when applied by Vile Taint. Enemies damaged by Phantom Singularity take 10% increased damage from you for its duration. Fam Singularity is going to be a lot better with this. Haunted Soul has just been removed. Haunt is getting a 230% increase in damage, but not in PvP. Feels bad. Feels bad. That's also going to be, I think it heals you also, so that's a really big change to survivability, although Aflock already probably took 0 damage in PvE. It's probably not a big deal. Call of the Week has moved to Gate 2. They've moved a whole bunch of your talents around on the tree. We had to log in specifically to see the ramifications of that. For Destruction Warlock, Reverse Entropy and Internal Combustion, there's a bunch of movement for talents it looks like here. But they've also removed Flame Rift, Lessons of Space and Time, and Unstable Rifts. Oh, is this the one where Incinerate procced Rifts? I really wanted to try that one. They removed it before they even implemented it, man. That one was going to summon Rifts off AoE Incinerates, but I mean, I can kind of see why they would want to remove that, because that would have been crazy good, but I actually really wanted to just see that one time to see how crazy you could get. For Warrior, Second Wind gains an additional effect while you're below 35%. Restore 1% health every 1 second. The amount restored increases the closer you are to death, max 2%. No way they're bringing this back, man. That is so broken. It's so broken. No, don't bring it back. Don't bring this back. Don't bring this back. This is so broken. Warriors are never gonna die. They're never gonna die. Oh my god. Colossus Bone Shaker now increases the stun duration of Shockwave by 1 down from 2 and slows the movement of targets by 40% after the stun fades. So no 5-second Shockwave, only 4-second Shockwave, but still really good. Rally renamed to Veteran Vitality for some reason, so we can confuse everybody who's learned what the name of that ability is over the past 10 years. I don't like when they rename abilities, especially if the ability hasn't changed. Slayer Relentless Pursuit's removal of movement impairing effects can now occur only once every 30 seconds. So you're only going to be able to charge out of a route every 30, but they've made sure that it won't accidentally trigger if you're not affected by one. A debuff was added to allow players to track the 30-second limit, so you can also see when you're going to get your next charge out of a route. Vicious Agility Charge now reduces the cooldown of Heroic Leap by 2 down from 5, and Reap the Storm now has a 20% chance to trigger from Mortal Strike or Bloodthirst, was 2 RPPM on Overpower or Raging Blow. Lethal Reflexes replaced with Fierce Follow Through. Mortal Strike and Bloodthirst critical strikes increase the damage of your next Mortal Strike or Bloodthirst by 15%. So just a little bit of reduction in terms of mobility, which I think was going to be necessary with this talent tree for Warrior. It was absolutely crazy. For Arms Warrior, Crushing Force now increases Mortal Strike damage by 5%, Mortal Strike critical strike damage by 5%. Previously it was Slam. Interesting. So they completely removed that effect out. Slam's probably going to be way less, you're not even going to care about it in your rotation. Barbaric Training now also affects Cleave. Damage bonus reduced to 10 from 20. And Seismic Reverberation now also triggers from Cleave. So getting more synergies for Cleave specifically is going to be really good for Mythic Plus. Doesn't really matter for PvP. Battlelord no longer increases overpower damage and now generates 10 rage when it resets the cooldown of Mortal Strike. Losing a little bit of overpower damage there kind of feels bad, though. They're adding levers to the arena so that once all 6 players have clicked this lever, it'll just skip immediately to 10 seconds remaining. In Dragonflight, you got to switch a lot of talents around in between rounds and, consider different things. So I don't know how much, and some people are going to go AFK, especially in like Solo Shuffle, which is the most dominant use of arena at the moment. I don't know if I ever see this actually being clicked successfully, but maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we'll see that play out. They've nerfed a bunch of items that I assume were going to be really good in PvP from PvE with this change as well here, so just keeping ahead of that ahead of time. Same thing with leatherworking and tailoring items, reducing the effects that come from these spells, specifically all the profession-oriented stuff, so staying on top of that stuff. So big changes following through on this update. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of the War Within so far, as we will be continuing to cover all the specializations and giving you as many sneak peeks as we can moving forward, so you're ahead of the competition. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.